Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. I come to you today with a heavy heart regarding what happened just last night. Today is May 22nd. Last night, Wednesday, May 21st, where a young Israeli couple, a beautiful young couple, one 30 years old, the other 26 years old, engaged to be married, was murdered in cold blood by a left-wing, radical, pro-Hamas terrorist. He's a domestic terrorist. This just happened last night outside a Jewish museum in Washington, D.C. You probably have heard by now. President Trump commented on it. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu commented on it. It's a major story for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, to me, and I hate to say this, and please don't take me the wrong way, this was actually inevitable. It was and I'm sad to say, it was the inevitable outcome of a year and a half since the October 7th massacre, a year and a half straight of anti-Semitic, Jew-hating venom right here in America, where I'm sitting right now. But we have viewers from all around the world. So, if you live in Europe, Africa, anywhere, Australia, South America, we've seen it. We've seen these. The only way they can be described are pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, Jew-hating mobs. Certainly college campuses here in the United States, certainly in the streets of the United States, places like New York City, Chicago, Philly, LA, we've seen it. Free, free Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Death to Israel, death to the Jews. We've heard all these chants right here in America, across the Western world in particular. We have viewers, again, from every continent, but the Western world is supposed to be a beacon of tolerance and freedom and human rights. Well, guess what? Large segments of the Western world have not lived up to that standard in a long time, as the radical left and radical Islamists have gained a foothold, and more than a foothold. So we have last night two beautiful young people in the prime of life. They were engaged to be married. Let me give you their names. Yaron Lashinsky, 30 years old, getting reports, by the way, that he was an Israeli follower of Jesus. Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Lynn Milgram, 26 years old, engaged to be married. He was actually going to propose to her next week in Jerusalem. He was 30, she was 26, ready to build a life together. They're at this event at the Capitol Jewish Museum, a place I've been many times. I was based in Washington, D.C. for 17 years. The Capitol Jewish Museum, where they attended an event last night for young Jewish professionals. It's only a few blocks from the White House. And they're coming out of this event, and this radical left-wing socialist by the name of Elian Rodriguez, 30 years old, or Elias, I'm sorry, E-L-I-A-S, Elias Rodriguez, 30 years old, from Chicago, shoots them, reportedly from behind. What a hero, right? Shoots them and murders them in cold blood for no reason other than they were Jewish. That's it. Folks, this is so evil and demonic, it's hard to put it into words. He chanted "Free Palestine." The footage is out there. He chanted "Free Palestine" as he was taken into custody by police. And I said the footage is out there. You see behind me, this is the Stakelbeck Tonight set. I'm in Dallas, Texas. My nightly show, we've got the YouTube channel here, the Watchman Newscast, of course, every day. But my nightly show is called Stakelbeck Tonight. Every night on TBN, the world's largest Christian television network, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time every weeknight, Monday through Friday. You can subscribe to the Stakelbeck Tonight YouTube channel as well. Head over there and subscribe, and you'll get my monologue for tonight, which is going to be hard-hitting, showing that footage, showing a lot of footage, and showing its content you won't get here on the YouTube channel. It's the broadcast show Stakelbeck Tonight. But he yelled "Free Palestine." Now, he assassinated. This was an assassination. Assassinated these two Israelis who were embassy staffers. I buried the lead. They worked for the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Now, He shot them. Then he reportedly ran inside of this event and acted like he'd been victimized. He asked for a drink of water. Apparently, people were tending to him. All of a sudden, he pulls out a keffiyeh, that Palestinian scarf, and starts yelling, "Free Palestine." He's arrested, and he apparently said, "I did it for Gaza." So there you have it. And I said a minute ago, this was inevitable. It was. I hate to say it, it's a demonic, evil act. And he's been charged now with first-degree murder, by the way. But this is where it heads, folks. This is the inevitable outcome of the rhetoric, the incitement, a year and a half of rhetoric and incitement, steady, 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 steady. And it was allowed until President Trump took office here in America. It was allowed. It was tolerated, not only by the Biden administration, but by university presidents at places like Harvard, Columbia, et cetera. And in cities like New York City. They're marching in the streets, calling for death to the Jews and death to Israel, physically threatening, sometimes attacking Jews, certainly threatening them and threatening violence. It wasn't cracked down on. And now it's exploded out of control. You gave them an inch, they took a mile. And all they wanted, they don't want to free Palestine. They want to destroy Israel. First of all, there is no entity called Palestine. Breaking news. There's Israel. We can go into a long history lesson. But the long and the short of it is that the term Palestine was not used until around the year 132 AD by the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who renamed the land of Israel, Judea, Palestine, as a dig to the Jews. Palestine translates into Philistia. Sound familiar if you know your Bible? The Philistines. Since they were Israel's ancient hated enemy, Hadrian, because he hated the Jews, because they resisted him so fiercely, renamed the land Syria Palestina. He renamed Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina and put a pagan shrine atop the Temple Mount. That's the history. That's where the term Palestine came from. And the Palestinian so-called movement, Free Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, meaning no more Jews. That only became a popular thing in the 1960s with Yasser Arafat. This is the true history, folks. Name, if there was an entity called Palestine from time immemorial, right? Name the great Palestinian kings and emperors and explorers and military leaders. Who are they? Where are they? They didn't exist. It was the land of Israel. Then the Romans destroyed it. But there was always a Jewish presence in the land over those 2,000 dark years. Always. Sometimes it was very small, but there was always a continuous Jewish presence in the land of Israel. If you doubt me in terms of what it was like, number one, in the 1850s, even before the Zionist movement, this is very important for the conversation at hand. Even before the Zionist movement began in earnest, late 19th century, way back in the 1850s, Jerusalem had a Jewish majority. That's in the 1850s. The majority of residents of God's city were Jewish. And the Zionist movement didn't begin until 40 years later, where droves of the Jewish people came back to their ancient and ancestral homeland, just as God said they would. Read Mark Twain. Speaking of the 1850s, I think it was shortly after that, a book that Mark Twain wrote, the famous American author, called Innocents, E-N-T-S, Innocents Abroad. He wrote about his travels in the Holy Land. And he said, I can travel miles and miles in Israel and not see a single solitary soul. He was shocked by the condition of Jerusalem. It was a wasteland, malaria-ridden swamps. Where were the Palestinians? Where was that thriving great Palestinian civilization that we've heard so much about? The truth is the land was largely empty of its population, Jew, Arab, or otherwise, for a long time under the Ottoman Empire, under Ottoman rule, Turkish Ottoman rule. And when the Jewish people started coming back in droves, courtesy of the Zionist movement, but again, there was always the presence there, Jewish majority in the 1850s, then the Arabs, Muslims from surrounding countries and lands also began flocking to Israel. Why? They saw job opportunity. The Jews were moving back to the land. They were making the desert bloom, and there was opportunity. So Arabs who lived in surrounding countries wisely said, hey, it's a land of opportunity. Let's go in. The Jews hired them. Their numbers grew. The Jewish numbers grew. And the Jewish people again and again said, hey, we'll live side by side with you. And several different occasions, Israel said, okay, give them a parcel of land. We'll take a parcel of land. We'll live side by side. The Arabs rejected it. And in 1948, after decades of pogroms and slaughtering Jews in places like Hebron and attacking Jews, 5 Arab armies attacked Israel. And Israel, against all odds, with Holocaust survivors, barely armed, won the War of Independence in 1948. And their enemies have not rested ever since, both in Israel, in the Middle East, and here in the West. I mentioned the Israeli embassy. By the way, if you like what you're hearing, look, it's breaking news, current events, chiefly from the Middle East, but we'll hit all around the world depending on what's happening. This happened in DC. We're going to discuss it. Make sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. I mentioned the Israeli embassy in DC. Folks, this hits very close to home. Again, the couple, this young couple, this beautiful young couple that was murdered, worked at the Israeli embassy, staffers there, and more personal details on the couple, because we all need to be praying for their families. The quality of these 2 young, beautiful people who were murdered in cold blood by this pro-Hamas left-wing radical. More on him in a second as well. They were top-notch individuals. But this hits close to home for me. 2 weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C. You may have seen some of my reporting here on Stakelbeck tonight. I interviewed Israel's ambassador to the United States, Yakil Leiter. He's based in that embassy. I met with members, staffers at that embassy, who certainly knew this young couple that was murdered. I've spent a lot of time at that embassy over the years, conducting interviews, attending events, etc. And I lived in DC 17 years. I know exactly where the Capitol Jewish Museum is. I've been there. This hits very close to home for me. But it should hit close to home for all of us at the end of the day. This has to be the red line. A lot of us have warned. It starts with words. It never ends with words. It starts with words and threats and incitement and dehumanization. This was the Nazi playbook. The Jews at first were insulted, ostracized, yelled at, cursed at, ridiculed, called vermin and rats and all the rest, hook nose. And then I can't say it graduates, it devolves, it descends into the next level of the world's oldest hatred, antisemitism. And it becomes, we're going to take your property. We're going to ostracize you further. We're going to make you persona non grata in our country, in our city. And then it gradually moves on to physical violence. We've seen all the stages. Think about it. Right here in America and in Europe, and maybe in your neck of the woods, no matter where you live in the world. We've seen the stages. You might say, no. Yes. Number one, certainly we've seen the threats, verbal, incitement, intimidation, insults, ridicule, demonization, lies about the Jewish people. And by the way, if you're a Christian, a non-Jew watching right now, in a minute, I'll tell you why you should care. Because you may be watching and saying, man, tough break for the Jews. Wow. But I'm comfortable over here. They're not coming for me. Think again. It starts with the Jews. It never ends with the Jews. There's an old saying in the world of radical Islam, for instance, first the Saturday people, the Jews, then the Sunday people, the Christians. That's also applicable to the world of the radical left. It's becoming more and more apparent. You can bet your bottom dollars Elias Rodriguez, the domestic terrorist who assassinated these two Israeli embassy staffers in DC last night, I'm pretty sure he wasn't too fond of followers of Jesus either, not just the Jewish people in the state of Israel. That's the ideology. It's a godless ideology. And they'll get in bed together, by the way. The radical Islamist and the radical leftist have forged an unholy alliance, in particular over the past 25 years or so. They don't share love. They share hatred. They share hatreds of the Jews, of Israel, of America, of capitalism, of the US military, and most importantly, they share a hatred of the God of the Bible, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So these strange bedfellows, the radical left, radical leftists like Elias Rodriguez and radical Islamists, they'll work together. Now, the radical left, they think the radical Islamists are their foot soldiers. Radical Islamists, however, say the radical leftists are useful idiots. And when the dust settles, they, the pro-trans, pro-LGBT left, will have their first ones on the radical Islamist, will be the first ones, I should say, with their heads on the radical Islamist chopping block. So the Islamists look at the leftists who align with them and laugh and shake their head and say, they're helping us accomplish what we want, undermining Judeo-Christian Western civilization. And yet, when we get to that point, they'll be the first ones that we're going to take out. The Iranian model, 1979, the Iranian Revolution. The left, the Marxists, the socialists, they helped Ayatollah Khomeini come to power, folks. They were all in. Again, they used radical Islamists as the instrument to bring down their country and their civilization. They were willing to use them. The Islamists were brutal. They were organized. There was a lot of them. So the left in Iran stood back and said, let's let them do the dirty work. But it came back to bite them because they were eventually rounded up and executed by the Ayatollah and his acolytes. So cautionary tale for the radical left. But you've got another cautionary tale, Democrats in this country who are cheerleading for pro-Hamas non-citizens, non-US citizens, Hamas cheerleaders, anti-Semites, and also, by the way, the anti-Semitism goes hand in hand with anti-Christian viewpoints and anti-American viewpoints. And all these events I'm talking about, the mobs on the streets, if you haven't noticed, pay close attention. They're burning Israeli flags and they're also burning American flags. That's not by coincidence. They group the great Satan and the little Satan, as they would call them, together. So it's not by coincidence at all that you see American flags being burned at these anti-Israel rallies. But Mahmoud Khalil, remember him from Columbia University, several other radicals, not US citizens, President Trump, to his immense credit, is rounding them up and saying, you got to go. We're going to send you back to Syria or wherever. But you're out of here. You got to go. We're not going to have it. We're not going to have it because your behavior, Mahmoud, and others like you, pro-Hamas apologists, anti-Semites, your behavior is encouraging, ultimately, violence. I bring you last night in Washington, D.C. That's exactly what happened. That is the end game. And again, you might say, well, we haven't seen all the stages. No, you have. You've seen the dehumanization, the threats, the words. Then you've seen Jews. We talked about Jews being ostracized and they can't open a business. Think of Kristallnacht in Nazi Germany. Stage 2 in America, Jewish students were not able to enter their dorms. They were literally shut out of their schools. They weren't welcome at events. They were barred from entering events, etc. So Jews disenfranchised. And then number three, violence. We saw it last night. We've seen it more than last night. I mean, we've seen Jews attacked on the streets over the past year and a half, but last night was murderous violence. It was an assassination, a double assassination. So all the stages are there now. All the stages of anti-Semitism are disgustingly complete. So what are we going to do about it? And I'm talking in particular to the non-Jews who are watching right now. A radical leftist like Elias Rodriguez, who's locked up right now, he's a murderer, a domestic terrorist. Do you think he'd have any pity or sympathy for a Christian who's pro-Israel? He wants to kill the Jews, kill Israelis. What about friends of Israel? Won't they also be on the chopping block if the left gets their way, the radical left gets their way? Bible-believing people, conservative people, you know the playbook. The radical left has gone off the rails. It was always off the rails. By its nature, it's off the rails, by its own ideology that it espouses. But now it's descended into a particular kind of madness, folks. And a big reason for that was twofold. Number one, Donald Trump's back in office. Their worst nightmare in life, the radical left. They don't know how to handle it. They're doubling down on all the madness, the gender madness, all the rest. They don't know what to do. And he's winning, and he's doing incredible things for the country. He's got a strong administration with backbone who don't back down to the mainstream media and the radical left. They come back at them. Whether it's Trump, Marco Rubio has been amazing. I could go on and on. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary at the White House. They're not taking any of the nonsense. It's a new day. We've got X now and different social media platforms where here on YouTube, where we have viewpoints that differ from the mainstream media. Imagine that. It's a new day. The mainstream media, the left, does something underhanded and sneaky, and it's called out and exposed right away on X. It's been instructive the past few days. This book finally coming out called Original Sin, co-written by Jake Tapper of CNN, who was one of the biggest apologists for Joe Biden, who helped in the cover-up of Joe Biden's senility and his massive cognitive decline. Now he's got a book out about that very issue, exposing Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Now he's going to make millions of dollars off it after he engaged in the cover-up or helped engage. It's insane. But it's very instructive that he's been called out for the world to see. And he's doing damage control now. He'll make his money off of this book. It'll sell. But his reputation's taken a huge dent. I don't know if that happens a few years ago without X and without other alternative platforms. So that's encouraging. But I say all that to say the left, that's one reason that the radical left is on the ropes. And Trump's in office and he's pushing through this agenda at lightning speed. That's number one. One of the reasons they've become even more radicalized to the point of like foaming at the mouth violence. Number two, Israel, led by another man they hate. The only man they hate more than Bibi Netanyahu is Donald Trump, but they hate Bibi. Israel, led by Bibi, has smashed its enemies. That Iranian ring of fire is unraveling before our eyes. Israel's done incredible work in doing that with Bibi at the helm. So the enemies of Israel, who want to wipe Israel and the Jewish people off the map, are licking their wounds and in a very bad place, led by Iran itself, and vulnerable. And the radical left hates that. Trump's in office, Bibi's in office, and Israel's winning. This is the radical left's worst nightmare. They don't know what to do. So they turn to violence. That's all they do know. That's all they do know at the end of the day. Violence, anger, vindictiveness, jealousy, spite, all in one horrific, evil package last night in Washington, D.C. A little bit more about this shooter, Elian Rodriguez. Let me pull it up real quick, everyone. Sorry. Some of the facts we do know about him. I don't think you'll be too shocked about this. He said he did it for Gaza. He yelled, "Free, free Palestine," as he was being arrested. He was reportedly a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which has an anti-genocide pledge on its social media accounts. It's a far-left Marxist pro-Palestine group. He's from Chicago. He's 30 years old. He's wearing a red keffiyeh when he shouted "Free Palestine" after he murdered Sarah Lynn Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky. Party of Socialism and an anti-genocide pledge. You know, the Palestinians are the only people who the left says are being genocided, who their population's actually grown massively over the past 80 years. A genocide's been happening since 1948. Really? Then why has the Palestinian population exploded in that time? That's a strange kind of genocide where the population's growing. A little bit more about him. We don't know too much about Rodriguez, other than he was a left-wing radical activist, anti-Israel, the typical kind that you see on far too many college campuses and in far too many big cities. This wasn't a case of mental illness. He had a job. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was a demonically driven domestic terrorist. That's the only way you can put it. It wasn't because he had a tough home life that he went and murdered this beautiful young Israeli couple. And a little bit more about that couple, by the way. Some facts you need to know. My friend Joel Rosenberg writes in All Israel News that Yaron Lashinsky was a, quote, super solid Israeli Christian, diplomat, and a true Zionist. He was actually the brother of one of the journalists at All Israel News. Sarah Milgram, his fiance, beautiful. He was, again, their lives were snuffed out last night. It's almost too difficult to discuss if you see the pictures of them, a beautiful young couple in the prime of life, 30 and 26 years old. He bought an engagement ring and was going to propose to her in Jerusalem next week. Both Israeli diplomats at the embassy in DC. He was a strong and devout Israeli follower of Jesus, Yaron. Well known and well loved throughout the Israeli Christian community. But wow, wait a minute. I'm told all the time that Israel's anti-Christian, and some of the critics here, Israel hates Christians and Israel is this Jewish supremacist state. This is what someone like Elias Rodriguez would say, the murderer. Wow, but an Israeli Christian was working at the Israeli embassy in a government capacity in DC. This is why the truth is so important, ladies and gentlemen. The lies that have been told about Israel, I mean the lies, the all-time whoppers in human history. That's why we do what we do here. One of the reasons we do what we do, to shine light in the darkness. It's getting dark out there. And there's a concern about copycats after what this murderous terrorist did last night. I was going to call him a madman, but I don't think he was a madman. I think he knew perfectly well what he was doing. I think he was an evil, demonic man, but it's not like he lost his mind. It was in an insane asylum. He knew what he was doing. He was a premeditated murder, just like any assassination. Premeditated murder. But my concern is, and look how he's lauded now. Believe me, folks, the fan clubs will come out for him now. Remember Luigi Marione, I forget how to pronounce his last name, who killed the healthcare executive in New York City a few months ago? He's now been lionized by the left. The more depraved and evil you get, the more the left loves you. So I wouldn't be surprised if this Elian Rodriguez is lionized by the radical left. I mean, I mentioned earlier, Mahmoud Khalil, cautionary tale for the Democrat Party, that Columbia University radical. President Trump tries to deport him, and the Democrat Party howls and defends him. Maybe they'll change their mind after last night. What happened? Same with illegal alien wife beaters, Democrat Party, it never fails. They care more about the criminal than the victim. They don't care about the victim at all. It's really insane. It really encapsulates the ideology of the left today. The prophet Isaiah described it very accurately. Good is called evil, and evil is called good. Bible times, you're in, folks. And now as we wrap up, I think President Trump, actually, I know President Trump and his team are taking this deadly serious. They're saying we're going to stamp out this anti-Semitic scourge. So we're in good hands. If Joe Biden was in office, it would be feckless. He'd give them free reign like he was. So this is a red line. It's a wake-up call. Stay in prayer on this. Let's stand with the Jewish people. Stand with Israel for such a time as this. Because at the end of the day, you're standing with the Christian community as well when you do that. Because people like Elias Rodriguez and the pro-Hamas mobs on college campuses in American cities, they won't stop with the Jews. Believe me, if history shows us anything, it's that. Tough one to bring to you today. Pray for the families of the deceased. It's almost too horrific to even discuss, but we've covered a lot of ground here. Keep it all in prayer. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.